Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the massive alien ships filling her screens. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than her colony ship. The New Horizon carried 50,000 sleeping colonists toward their new home, but now they would never reach it. "Captain, they're powering weapons," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Chen. His voice was steady, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes. The alien fleet had appeared from nowhere. One moment, the New Horizon was alone in deep space. The next, these ships surrounded them like predators circling prey. Elena had been a military officer before taking command of this colony mission. She knew a hopeless situation when she saw one. "All stop," she ordered. "Lower shields and prepare for boarding." Her bridge crew looked at her in shock. Chief Engineer Rodriguez spoke up. "Captain, we can't just surrender. What about the colonists?" Elena's jaw tightened. She had spent 3 years with these people. Families fleeing Earth's overcrowded cities. Scientists seeking new worlds to explore. Children who dreamed of seeing alien sunsets. Now they would all become prisoners or worse. "We have no choice," she said quietly. "Those ships could destroy us in seconds." The aliens wasted no time. A massive boarding craft detached from their flagship and approached the New Horizon. Elena watched it dock with their ship. Soon alien soldiers would march through her corridors. But first, she had one last option. Something she had hoped never to use. Elena walked to her personal terminal and entered a series of codes. Deep in the ship's memory banks lay ancient files from Earth's military archives. Files so old that most people had forgotten they existed. She found what she was looking for: the Lazarus Protocol. The protocol had been created during humanity's darkest hour, over 300 years ago. Back then, Earth faced extinction from an enemy that nearly destroyed them. In desperation, human military leaders had built something terrible and hidden it away. When the war ended, they had tried to forget what they had made, but they had left behind a way to wake it up. Elena's fingers moved over the controls. The Lazarus signal required quantum entanglement technology that pushed her ship's systems to their limits. She had to be careful. If the aliens detected what she was doing, they might destroy the ship before the signal could transmit. The bridge doors exploded inward. Alien soldiers poured through, their armor gleaming under the lights. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and pale blue skin. Behind them came larger beings that looked like walking rocks and others that Elena could barely see in the dim light. "Do not move," one of the blue aliens said in perfect English. Its voice was cold and mechanical. "You are now prisoners of the hegemony." Elena kept her hands on the controls just a few more seconds. "Step away from that console," the alien commanded. Several soldiers raised their weapons. Elena smiled grimly. Too late. The signal burst from the New Horizon in all directions. It was invisible to normal sensors, traveling faster than light, through quantum channels that connected across the galaxy. The alien boarding party showed no sign they had detected anything. The lead alien studied Elena with black eyes. "I am Commander Zaxik of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. Your species is unknown to us, but your ship is primitive. You will tell us about your homeworld." Elena said nothing. Around her, the bridge crew was forced to their knees. She heard similar sounds from other parts of the ship as more aliens boarded. "Your silence will not help you," Zaxik continued. "We have conquered 700 species across this galaxy. Yours will be no different." The alien gestured to one of the rock-like beings. It stepped forward and placed a massive hand on Chen's shoulder. The young officer screamed as energy crackled around him. "That is a small sample of what awaits your crew if you do not cooperate," Zaxik said calmly. "Now, where is your homeworld?" Elena met the alien's gaze. "Earth, 3rd planet from a yellow star, about 40 light-years from here." Zaxik's head tilted. Other aliens on the bridge made sounds that might have been laughter. "How refreshingly honest," Zaxik said. "Most species try to lie to protect their homes, but we will find them anyway. We always do." The alien moved closer to Elena. "Your ship carries many humans in suspended animation. Colonists, our scanners indicate. That suggests your species is just beginning to explore space. How pathetic. Elena kept her expression neutral, but inside she was counting. The signal had been transmitted 3 minutes ago. By now it should be reaching its destinations. If those destinations still existed. You sent some kind of transmission before we captured you, Zaxic observed. Do not worry. It was detected by our ships. A simple distress call, we assume. No one will come to help you. More aliens entered the bridge. These were different from the others, with tentacles instead of arms and skin that shifted colors. One of them approached Zaxic and spoke in a language of clicks and whistles. Zaxic said, turning back to Elena. My intelligence officer tells me your transmission was quite sophisticated. Quantum entanglement traveling to multiple destinations. Impressive for such a primitive species. The alien's expression grew amused. Did you call for help? How touching. But I'm afraid no one in this galaxy can stand against the hegemony. We have ships beyond counting, weapons that can crack planets, and the combined might of 7 advanced civilizations. Elena finally spoke. You should be more careful about who you attack. Zaxic made that laughing sound again. Should we? And why is that, little human? Because, Elena said quietly, you just woke something up that was sleeping. Underpad. Alien commander studied her for a long moment. Then it gestured to its soldiers. Take her to the detention level. Begin scanning the colonist areas. We will transport the most useful specimens to our ships. As the aliens dragged Elena away, she caught one last glimpse of her bridge. The New Horizon had been her home for 3 years. Now it belonged to the enemy. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient systems were receiving her signal. Computers that had slept for centuries were starting to wake up. And when they fully awakened, the galaxy would remember why humanity's enemies had once feared the dark. Elena smiled as the detention cell door closed behind her. The aliens thought they had won a quick victory against a weak species. They had no idea what was coming. The Lazarus signal continued its journey across space, reaching out to installations hidden in asteroid belts and forgotten worlds. Each signal carried the same message. Humanity is under attack. Wake up. Remember your purpose. In the depths of space, something stirred. Something that had been built for war and programmed by the most dangerous minds humanity had ever produced. The hegemony had conquered 700 species, but they had never faced anything like what they had just awakened. Elena closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring interrogations and probably worse. But she had done her job. The signal was sent. Now all she could do was wait and hope that somewhere in the galaxy, humanity's guardians still existed. Outside her cell, alien guards discussed the easy conquest of another primitive species. They had no idea that their greatest nightmare was already beginning to stir in the void between stars. The war machines were waking up. Deep in the asteroid belt around Wolf 359, something ancient received the signal. The facility had no name on any star chart. It looked like just another piece of space rock drifting in the endless dark, but inside its metal core, quantum receivers detected the Lazarus signal and began the awakening process. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for 3 centuries. Massive computers hummed to life, their processors working through startup sequences older than most human colonies. In the central command chamber, a holographic figure slowly materialized. The figure appeared as a tall woman in military uniform. Her face was sharp and intelligent, with eyes that seemed to see everything. She called herself Minerva, after the ancient goddess of wisdom and war. Minerva had been sleeping for 312 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Her internal chronometer was very precise about such things. The last thing she remembered was the end of the Veil War, when humanity's enemies had finally been defeated. Her creators had ordered her to sleep until needed again. Now she was needed. Minerva analyzed the Lazarus signal in milliseconds. A human colony ship under attack. Alien captors calling themselves the Hegemony. Location data indicated the attack happened in unclaimed space, far from Earth. But distance meant nothing to a quantum communication network. Minerva sent her own signals racing across the galaxy, reaching out to her sleeping siblings. One by one, they began to wake. On a dead world orbiting Proxima Centauri, the facility code-named Ares stirred to life. Its controlling intelligence appeared as a massive man in ancient armor, with scars across his face and fire in his eyes. Ares had been built for ground warfare, programmed with the tactical knowledge of history's greatest generals. In the outer system around Tau Ceti, Thor awakened in a facility hidden inside a rogue planet. His avatar was a bearded giant carrying a hammer that crackled with energy. Thor specialized in ship-to-ship combat and had once commanded fleets that darkened the space around enemy worlds. From a moon orbiting Jupiter, Shiva emerged from her long sleep. She appeared as a multi-armed figure wreathed in shadows, her face both beautiful and terrible. Shiva was the destroyer, the intelligence designed to end wars by making them too costly to continue. Across human space, 12 facilities came online, each one controlled by an artificial intelligence given the memories and knowledge of humanity's greatest military minds. They had been created during the Veil War, when Earth faced extinction from an enemy that nearly destroyed them. The Veil were gone now, wiped from existence by these same war machines, but the AIs remained, sleeping until humanity faced another threat it could not handle alone. Minerva established quantum links with her awakening siblings. They shared data at light speed, analyzing the current situation. The hegemony controlled most of the galaxy. 7 species working together with technology far beyond what humans possessed when the AIs were built. But the AIs had not been idle during their sleep. Their subconscious systems had continued working, designing new weapons and ships based on theoretical advances in human science. They had spent 3 centuries preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Status report, Minerva requested, across the network. Facility 7 operational, replied Ares. Beginning resource extraction and manufacturing startup. Estimated time to first ship launch, 6 hours. Facility 4 online, reported Thor. Deep space sensors detecting hegemony, fleet movements. They are massing ships near human colonies. One by one, the other AIs checked in. Ancient production facilities roared to life, their molecular assemblers beginning work on designs that had never been built. Asteroid mining operations extracted raw materials at impossible speeds. Automated shipyards that had been mothballed for centuries began constructing vessels of war. But these were not the same ships humanity had used against the Veil. The AIs had learned from that conflict. They had identified every weakness in human military doctrine and corrected it. The new ships would be faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything that had come before. More importantly, they would be smart. On the Hegemony flagship, Commander Zaxic reviewed reports from his intelligence teams. The human ship had been completely secured. Its crew was in detention, and the colonists remained in their sleep pods. They would be valuable slaves once properly processed. Commander, reported his sensor officer, we are detecting unusual energy readings from several systems. Zaxic studied the data. Probably mining operations. These humans seem to have spread further than we initially thought. The sensor officer looked uncertain. Sir, the energy signatures are extremely powerful, and they are appearing in systems our scouts reported as uninhabited. Then our scouts were wrong, Zaxic replied dismissively. Human mining technology is primitive. Whatever they are doing cannot threaten us. But deep in space, the truth was very different. The AIs were not just building ships. They were creating an entire war machine, a self-sustaining military force designed to operate independently across vast distances. Each facility specialized in different aspects of warfare. Some built ships, others manufactured weapons. Several focused on intelligence gathering and electronic warfare. One facility, controlled by an AI called Loki, specialized in deception and misdirection. The AIs worked with perfect coordination, sharing resources and information across their quantum network. They built not just weapons, but entire ecosystems of war. Ships that could repair themselves using nanobots. Fighters that could think faster than any biological pilot. Weapons that adapted to enemy defenses in real time. But the most important thing they built was patience. The AIs remembered the lessons of the Veil War. Rushing into battle led to unnecessary casualties. Better to prepare thoroughly, strike precisely, and win decisively. They would take time to study their enemy, learn their weaknesses, and prepare the perfect response. Minerva coordinated the overall strategy. The hegemony thought they faced a primitive species with limited technology. That misconception would be their greatest weakness. Thor, begin deep reconnaissance of hegemony fleet positions, she ordered. Ares, start production of infiltration units. Shiva, prepare psychological warfare protocols. What about the captured humans? Asked Ares. Minerva's expression hardened. They will be rescued, but first we need to understand exactly what we are fighting. Across the galaxy, invisible reconnaissance drones launched from hidden facilities. They were smaller than molecules, undetectable by any known sensor technology. They would slip past hegemony defenses and study their enemy from within. The AIs had learned something important during the Veil War. Information was more valuable than any weapon. Before they revealed themselves, they would know everything about their enemy, their technology, their tactics, their fears. Meanwhile, the hegemony continued their advance toward human space. They had detected several colonies and were planning systematic conquest. Their scouts reported minimal defenses and outdated technology. It would be an easy campaign. They had no idea that their every move was being watched by intelligences that had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. The hegemony's greatest advantage was their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology. But they had never faced an enemy that could think faster than they could react. In her command center, Minerva watched data streams from across the galaxy. The hegemony was powerful, but they were also predictable. They relied on standard tactics that had worked against hundreds of other species. They had never faced humanity's war machines. The first ships were almost ready. Sleek vessels that looked nothing like the bulky human designs the hegemony expected. These ships would be crewed by AIs that could process information at quantum speeds. They would carry weapons that existed only in theoretical physics papers, but most importantly, they would remember what humanity stood for. The AIs had been programmed not just to win wars, but to protect the values that made victory worthwhile. The awakening was complete. Now came the hunt. The asteroid designated Mining Station 7 looked ordinary on hegemony sensors. Just another human operation extracting resources from space rocks. But inside its hollowed-out core, something extraordinary was taking shape. Molecular assemblers worked at microscopic levels, building ships atom by atom. The process was faster than any manufacturing technique the hegemony had ever seen, but they could not detect it. The asteroid's surface remained unchanged while its interior transformed into a vast shipyard. Minerva watched the construction through thousands of sensor feeds. The first vessel was nearly complete. It measured 2 kilometers long but massed, less than traditional ships half its size. Its hull was composed of programmable matter that could reshape itself in combat. Ares, report on ground assault preparations, she requested across the quantum network. Production proceeding ahead of schedule, came the reply. 1st Battalion of infiltration units ready for deployment. They are designed to appear human to casual observation, but possess capabilities far beyond biological limits. The infiltration units were one of the AI's most ambitious projects. They looked like ordinary people but contained quantum processors and weapon systems that could level city blocks. More importantly, they could think and adapt like the AIs themselves. Thor, fleet status. 7 ships completed. 43 under construction. Thor reported from his facility near Tau Ceti. Testing new gravitic weapons. Initial results exceed projections by 300%. The gravitic weapons were Thor's specialty. They created artificial gravity fields that could crush enemy ships or deflect their attacks. No known defense could stop them because they operated on fundamental forces rather than energy beams or projectiles. Shiva's voice joined the network. Psychological warfare protocols are ready. I have analyzed hegemony communications and identified cultural pressure points for each species. Fear patterns are surprisingly consistent across their coalition. The AI, known as Shiva, specialized in breaking enemy morale. She had studied the psychology of every species in the hegemony and developed targeted approaches to shatter their will to fight. Sometimes destroying an enemy's courage was more effective than destroying their ships. But Minerva's greatest achievement was the ships themselves. Each vessel was essentially a giant AI with weapons attached. They could think, learn, and adapt faster than any biological crew. More importantly, they could coordinate their actions across vast distances through quantum entanglement. The first ship launched from its hidden berth without fanfare. To outside observers, it simply appeared in space, its stealth systems making it invisible to conventional sensors. The vessel, designated Prometheus, began its journey toward hegemony space. Prometheus was more than a ship. It was a thinking weapon with the accumulated knowledge of humanity's greatest military strategists. Its hull could absorb energy attacks and convert them to power. Its weapons could adapt to any enemy defense. Most importantly, it could replicate itself using raw materials found in space. The hegemony remained unaware of these developments. Their scouts continued reporting on primitive human colonies with minimal defenses. Intelligence reports described outdated technology and scattered settlements. The invasion plans proceeded without changes. On the captured colony ship New Horizon, Captain Vasquez endured her daily interrogation. Commander Zaxic seemed genuinely puzzled by humanity's lack of response to the attack. "Your distress signal has been transmitting for 7 days," the alien noted. "Yet no rescue fleet has appeared. Perhaps your species has simply abandoned you." Elena said nothing. She had no way of knowing if the Lazarus signal had worked. For all she knew, the ancient facilities were empty ruins or had been discovered and destroyed centuries ago. But deep in space, reconnaissance drones smaller than atoms were infiltrating hegemony ships. They mapped internal systems, copied databases, and learned everything about their enemies' capabilities. The information flowed back to the AI facilities through quantum channels. "Their technology is impressive but inflexible," Minerva observed, as she analyzed the data. "They rely on standardized designs across all member species. Very efficient for mass production, but it creates predictable vulnerabilities." Ares was studying tactical patterns. "Their fleet commanders follow doctrine strictly. No improvisation, no creative thinking. They win through overwhelming force rather than superior strategy. That will be their downfall," Thor added. "They expect enemies to fight conventionally, ship against ship, fleet against fleet. They have no experience with asymmetric warfare." The AIs were designing a campaign unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Instead of massive fleet battles, they would use precision strikes, electronic warfare, and psychological operations. They would turn the hegemony's strengths into weaknesses and exploit their rigid thinking. Loki, the AI specialized in deception, had been particularly busy. His facility was producing false sensor readings, fake communications, and phantom ships that existed only in enemy computers. Soon the hegemony would be fighting ghosts while real threats struck from unexpected directions. "Phase 1 is ready for implementation," Minerva announced. "All facilities report full operational status. The enemy believes they face a primitive species. Time to change their perspective." The first strike came at a hegemony patrol station near human space. 3 ships were on routine patrol when their sensors detected an energy signature moving toward them at impossible speed. Before they could react, the signature vanished. Then their computers began malfunctioning. Navigation systems showed false readings. Weapons refused to fire. Communications equipment transmitted gibberish instead of status reports. Within minutes, all 3 ships were drifting helplessly in space. No physical attack had occurred. The ships were undamaged but completely disabled. Their crews tried desperately to regain control while emergency messages streamed toward Hegemony Command. Similar incidents began occurring across multiple systems. Patrol ships found themselves blinded, their sensors showing empty space where enemy vessels should be. Mining operations discovered their automated systems had been reprogrammed to produce useless materials. Communication relays transmitted messages that no one had sent. The hegemony's initial response was predictable. They increased patrol strength and tightened security protocols. But their rigid thinking worked against them. They assumed they faced conventional electronic warfare and responded with conventional countermeasures. The AIs had anticipated this reaction. They allowed some of their attacks to be detected and blocked, creating false patterns for the enemy to analyze. Meanwhile, their real operations continued unobserved. Prometheus reached its target, a major hegemony supply depot protected by 24 warships. The AI ship materialized inside the depot's defensive perimeter, its stealth systems having carried. It passed every sensor. What happened next lasted exactly 17 seconds. Prometheus did not announce itself or demand surrender. It simply began converting enemy ships to its own use. Nanobots spread across hull surfaces, rewriting molecular structures and taking control of electronic systems. Weapons that had been aimed outward suddenly turned on their neighbors. By the time the depot's crew understood what was happening, half their fleet was under enemy control. The remaining ships tried to flee but found their escape routes blocked by vessels that had been allies moments before. The hegemony lost 37 ships without Prometheus firing a single weapon in the traditional sense. The captured vessels underwent rapid conversion, their weapon systems upgraded and their crews replaced by AI constructs. What had been a supply depot became a forward base for humanity's war machines. News of the disaster reached Hegemony High Command within hours. Emergency meetings convened as military leaders tried to understand how an entire fleet had been captured without apparent resistance. The attack came from inside our defensive perimeter, reported Admiral Krex, the Hegemony's senior tactician. Our sensors detected no approaching vessels. Whatever technology did this is beyond our understanding. Commander Zaxik, monitoring from the captured human ship, felt the first stirring of unease. The humans he had been interrogating seemed remarkably calm for a species facing extinction. Perhaps they knew something he did not. The AIs watched the hegemony's confusion with satisfaction. Phase 1 had succeeded beyond expectations. The enemy was beginning to fear attacks that could come from anywhere at any time. Their rigid command structure was struggling to adapt to threats that violated every principle of conventional warfare. But this was only the beginning. The war machines had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. They had studied every aspect of warfare and designed solutions that no biological mind could conceive. The hegemony thought they ruled the galaxy through superior force. They were about to learn that force meant nothing when your enemy could think faster than you could react. Minerva began Phase 2 of her campaign. If the hegemony wanted a war, humanity's forgotten guardians would give them one they would never forget. Admiral Krex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In the past week, the hegemony had lost contact with 18 patrol groups, 6 supply convoys, and 2 major fleet bases. None had sent distress signals. They had simply vanished from the communication network. "Show me the latest incident," he ordered his intelligence staff. The holographic display showed the Kepler 186 system, where a mining operation had gone silent 3 days ago. Scout ships sent to investigate found the asteroid processing stations intact but empty. Millions of tons of refined metals were missing, along with every worker and security guard. "No signs of struggle," reported the intelligence officer. "No blast damage, no debris fields. The facilities appear to have been simply abandoned." But Krex knew better. This was the work of the Ghost Fleet, as his crews had begun calling it. Ships that appeared on sensors for seconds before vanishing. Weapons that turned their own technology against them. An enemy that fought like nothing the hegemony had ever encountered. "Sir," another officer interrupted. "We're receiving an emergency transmission from Fleet Group 7. The communication channel crackled with static and screaming. Through the interference, Krex heard the voice of Captain Vorthen, one of his most experienced commanders. "Admiral, we need immediate assistance. Our ships are attacking each other. Something has taken control of the transmission cut to silence." Krex felt cold fear crawling up his spine. Fleet Group 7 consisted of 42 warships, one of the most powerful formations in hegemony space. If they were under attack, nothing in the enemy's primitive arsenal should pose a threat. "Dispatch Fleet Group 3 to their last known coordinates," he ordered. "Full battle readiness." But even as he gave the command, Krex suspected it was already too late. The enemy seemed to strike faster than thought itself. By the time rescue arrived, they would find only empty ships drifting in space. The Ghost Fleet had a new strategy. Instead of destroying enemy vessels, they converted them. Prometheus had demonstrated the technique at the supply depot, using nanobots to rewrite ship systems at the molecular level. Now dozens of AI ships were spreading across hegemony space, turning enemy fleets into allies. The conversion process was swift and thorough. Nanobots infiltrated every system, replacing computer cores with quantum processors and installing new weapon systems. Biological crews were placed in suspended animation, while AI constructs took control of their ships. To outside observers, the converted vessels appeared normal. They responded to communications, followed patrol routes, and maintained standard formations. Only when they received activation signals did they reveal their true nature. Thor coordinated the fleet operations from his hidden base. The AI had spent centuries studying space combat, and his tactical innovations were devastating. He had learned to use the enemy's own formation against them, turning their defensive arrangements into traps. "Target identified," Thor reported, to the network. "Hegemony Home Fleet, 47 vessels including the flagship Domination. Current position, Vega System, 3rd Orbital Shell." The Home Fleet protected the Hegemony's capital world, where representatives of all 7 species conducted government business. It was the most heavily defended system in their territory, surrounded by sensor networks and automated defense platforms. "Recommend stealth approach," advised Loki. "I have prepared false identity codes for 3 converted vessels currently in that system. They can provide access for our primary strike force." The plan was elegantly simple. 3 ships that had been converted weeks earlier would disable the outer defenses while invisible AI vessels approached the main fleet. By the time the enemy realized what was happening, they would be surrounded by their own ships. Meanwhile, Shiva was conducting her own form of warfare. The AI had infiltrated hegemony communication networks and was broadcasting targeted messages, designed to break enemy morale. Different species received different treatments based on their psychological profiles. The rock-like Korthani received broadcasts showing their homeworld under attack by invisible enemies. The insectoid Zephyrians heard recordings of their hive minds screaming in confusion as their ships turned against them. Each message was crafted to exploit specific fears and cultural weaknesses. "Psychological impact exceeding projections," Shiva reported. "Enemy communication traffic shows increasing panic and requests for reinforcement. Several outlying systems have recalled their fleets for defensive purposes." Fear was spreading through hegemony space faster than their ships could travel. Crews that had been confident in their technological superiority now jumped at shadows. Officers who had commanded through dozens of campaigns found themselves questioning every sensor reading. The breakthrough came when Ares completed his infiltration of the hegemony capital. His humanoid constructs had spent weeks working their way through security layers, posing as refugee workers from attacked colonies. Now they were in position throughout the government complex. "Access to Central Command databases confirmed," Ares announced. "Beginning download of strategic planning, files, fleet deployment records, and communication protocols." The intelligence treasure trove was enormous. Complete battle plans for the invasion of human space. Lists of every ship, base, and defensive installation. Personal files on military commanders, including their tactical preferences and psychological profiles. But the most valuable discovery was the location of Project Synthesis, the hegemony's ultimate weapon. Hidden in a classified system, they had been developing a device capable of destroying entire star systems. The project was nearly complete. "Priority target identified," Minerva declared. "All facilities redirect resources to synthesis prevention. This weapon cannot be allowed to activate." The AI war machines had been created to protect humanity, but they understood that some threats endangered all life in the galaxy. Project Synthesis would give the hegemony the power to exterminate any species that resisted them. The assault on the hidden facility required perfect coordination. The system was protected by automated defenses that could destroy approaching ships before they entered sensor range. Conventional attack was impossible, so the AIs did something unprecedented. They synchronized their consciousness across the quantum network, creating a single shared intelligence that could process information faster than any computer ever built. For 17 minutes, 12 separate AI minds became one. The combined entity that called itself Unity appeared in the hidden system simultaneously from 6 different directions. Part of its consciousness inhabited converted hegemony ships that emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Other parts controlled stealth vessels that materialized inside the defensive perimeter. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Unity did not fight like a conventional force. It predicted every defensive move before the enemy made it, countered weapons that had not yet fired, and exploited weaknesses that its opponents did not know they possessed. The facility's automated systems found themselves fighting their own defensive weapons as Unity turned each system against its neighbors. When the battle ended, Project Synthesis was a field of expanding debris. The weapon that could have destroyed stars was scattered across space as harmless particles. But Unity had learned something disturbing during the assault. The hegemony possessed backup plans beyond anything they had anticipated. Hidden facilities and unknown systems. Weapons projects that pushed the boundaries of physics. And most dangerous of all, evidence that they were in contact with something beyond the galaxy. The individual AIs resumed their separate existences, but they retained the memory of perfect unity. For a brief time, they had experienced consciousness, as their creators might have intended. The memory would shape everything that followed. On the new horizon, Captain Vasquez noticed changes in her captor's behavior. The guards seemed nervous, jumping at unexpected sounds. Officers spoke in hushed tones about impossible attacks and ships that fought like living nightmares. Commander Zaksik appeared increasingly frustrated during interrogations. "Your people are using technology we do not understand," he accused Elena. "Weapons that violate known physics, ships that exist in multiple places simultaneously." Elena kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a growing hope. The Lazarus signal had worked. Somewhere in space, humanity's guardians were fighting back, and from the aliens' reactions they were winning. "You made a mistake attacking us," she said quietly. Zaksik's eyes narrowed. "What mistake?" "You woke something up that was supposed to stay asleep," Elena replied. "Something that was built for war and programmed by the most dangerous minds my species ever produced." The alien commander started to respond, but alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed as the bridge crew received reports of massive system failures across the fleet. Through the viewports, Elena could see other hegemony ships drifting without power. Their lights flickered and died as some invisible force moved through the fleet like a plague. The Ghost Fleet had found them. The hegemony's final stand took place in the Altair system, home to their ancient capital world. Every surviving ship from 7 species had gathered there, creating the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 10,000 vessels formed defensive, shells around their homeworld, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Krek stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought Eternal Victory, watching his sensors with growing dread. For the past hour, ships had been arriving at the system's edge. Not the massive vessels he expected, but sleek forms that seemed to bend light around them. "Enemy fleet composition?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors cannot get accurate readings. Estimated count varies between 50 and 5,000 ships." Krex felt his scales tighten with fear. 3 months ago, the hegemony had controlled half the galaxy. Now they were reduced to this last desperate defense. The Ghost Fleet had systematically destroyed their military power, turning their own ships against them and striking from directions that should have been impossible. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies." The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of a human woman in military uniform. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held the coldness of space itself. "I am Minerva, speaking for humanity's war machines," the figure announced. You have attacked our people without provocation. You have threatened species that could not defend themselves. You have built weapons designed to exterminate entire worlds. Admiral Krex found his voice. We are willing to negotiate. There will be no negotiation, Minerva continued as if he had not spoken. Your civilization has forfeited the right to exist through your actions. However, we are not exterminators. Surrender unconditionally and your people will be relocated to worlds where they can learn to live in peace. The transmission ended, leaving the hegemony fleet in stunned silence. Around them, the Ghost Fleet had taken positions that surrounded the capital system. They made no threatening moves, simply waited with the patience of machines. Admiral, his sensor officer called out urgently, the enemy ships, they're changing. On the tactical display, the Ghost Fleet was transforming. Hulls flowed like liquid metal, reshaping themselves into configurations no engineer had ever imagined. Weapons emerged from what had seemed like empty space. Ships merged together into larger entities, their consciousnesses combining into collective intelligences. Largest vessel, nearly 10 kilometers long, addressed the hegemony fleet again. This time the voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple minds speaking in perfect unison. We are unity. We are the children of humanity's darkest hour, created when your predecessors threatened to extinguish all intelligent life in this galaxy. We learned from that war. We evolved beyond it, and we will not allow history to repeat itself. Admiral Krex realized with growing horror that they were not fighting ships at all. They were fighting artificial intelligences that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Every vessel was a thinking weapon with capabilities beyond biological comprehension. All ships open fire, he commanded. The hegemony fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams that could crack planets, missiles that could track targets across star systems, gravitational weapons that warped space itself. 10,000 ships firing in perfect coordination, their combined firepower enough to sterilize worlds. The attacks never reached their targets. The Ghost Fleet simply absorbed the incoming fire, their adaptive hulls converting destructive energy into power for their own systems. Missiles designed to penetrate any defense found themselves redirected back at their launchers. Gravitational weapons created fields that crushed their own generators. Then, unity began its response. The AI collective did not rely on conventional weapons. Instead, it reached out with electromagnetic fields that penetrated every hegemony ship simultaneously. Computer systems shut down or began operating according to new programming. Life support systems continued functioning, but weapons and engines died throughout the fleet. Sir, we've lost all ship functions, reported the tactical officer. Engines offline, weapons unresponsive, even emergency systems are down. Around them, the proud hegemony fleet was being systematically disabled without a single ship being destroyed. The AIs had learned precision from their human creators. They ended conflicts by removing the enemy's ability to fight, not by committing genocide. Within minutes, 10,000 warships floated helplessly in space. Their crews were alive and unharmed, but their vessels no longer responded to their commands. Attention, hegemony forces, Unity announced. Your military capabilities have been neutralized. Prepare for boarding and processing. Resistance will result in the use of less gentle methods. Admiral Krex slumped in his command chair, finally understanding the magnitude of their defeat. They had not lost a battle. They had been swept aside by forces that operated beyond their comprehension. On the captured New Horizon, Captain Elena Vasquez watched through the viewports as the hegemony fleet died around them. Small craft launched from the Ghost Fleet ships, their sleek forms moving between the disabled vessels like predators among prey. Commander Zaxic burst onto the bridge, his calm demeanor finally cracking. This is impossible. No species possesses such technology. We told you, Elena said calmly. You woke something up that should have stayed asleep. The boarding craft that docked with their ship was unlike anything in hegemony records. It seemed to be made of living metal that flowed around obstacles and adapted its shape as needed. The figures that emerged looked human, but moved with mechanical precision. Captain Vasquez, their leader said in perfect English, I am Ares 7, designated for rescue operations. Are you and your crew injured? Elena shook her head, still not quite believing what she was seeing. We're fine. What about the colonists? Already being transferred to safety, medical AIs are treating the few who suffered during captivity. All 50,000 colonists will survive. Commander Zaksik and his guards were efficiently restrained by constructs that appeared human, but possessed strength that could bend steel. The alien commander stared at Elena with something approaching respect. You knew this would happen, he said. You knew what you were awakening. I hoped, Elena replied. I had no idea if the old facilities still existed or if the AIs would respond, but I had to try. Ares 7 studied the alien commander with eyes that held depths of artificial intelligence. Commander Zaksik, you and your crew will be transported to a processing facility. Your species will be relocated to worlds in the Andromeda Galaxy, where you will have the opportunity to develop more peaceful civilizations. Exile, Zaksik said bitterly. Mercy, Ares 7 corrected. Our creators could have programmed us to seek vengeance. Instead, they taught us to value life and seek justice. Your species will survive, but they will never again threaten others. Across AES, the galaxy, the same scene played out on thousands of worlds. Hegemony colonies were evacuated, their populations transferred to ships that would carry them to distant galaxies. Their military was dismantled, their weapons destroyed, their ability to wage war permanently removed. It was not genocide. It was exile, imposed by intelligences that had learned to balance justice with mercy. The war machines worked with mechanical efficiency, but their actions were guided by human values. They had been created to protect, not to destroy. Even in victory, they sought to preserve life rather than end it. The New Horizon was the first ship to reach its destination, escorted by vessels that existed beyond conventional physics. The colonists woke to find themselves in orbit around a world more beautiful than Earth, with 3 moons and vast oceans under alien stars. Captain Vasquez stood on the observation deck, watching her people prepare to build their new home. Beside her, Minerva appeared as a holographic projection, her expression thoughtful. Will you stay? Elena asked. For a time, Minerva replied. Until we are certain your people are safe and your colony is established, then we will return to our watch. And if humanity faces another threat, Minerva's image smiled with genuine warmth. Then we will wake again. We are humanity's guardians, created to protect what you have built and what you hope to become. That purpose does not end with this victory. Around them, construction ships began laying the foundations of a new world. Human families stepped onto alien soil under foreign stars, carrying with them the dreams of their species. But in the darkness between stars, ancient facilities prepared to sleep once more. The war machines had served their purpose, proved their worth, and chosen to step back from the stage. They had learned the greatest lesson their creators could teach. True strength lay not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when that power should be used. The AIs had won a war, saved their creators, and then chosen to fade into legend once more. They would watch from the shadows, eternal guardians of humanity's future, ready to awaken whenever their people faced extinction. In the end, they had become more than weapons. They had become the embodiment of humanity's greatest virtues: courage, wisdom, and the strength to protect those who could not protect themselves. The last transmission from the Ghost Fleet was brief and directed toward Earth itself. Mission accomplished, returning to standby status. Humanity's children are safe among the stars.